Ryan, big opening this past weekend from Mr. Jordan Peele. The what some people are trying to anoint him as the best voice in horror, not just recent voice in horror, but ever. And I take issue with that. But that is probably a discussion for another time. Let's try to grade him by what he just gave us. Which is a little kind of sci-fi horror.
More sci-fi, yeah.
Called No. Okay, so it's sci-fi with horror elements.
Yeah, and some spaghetti western bits too.
Sure.
A lot of that's in the soundtrack, but
yeah. So Nope was a big deal when the first trailer kicked off. Everyone was like, "What the actual hell?" And then I didn't watch the second trailer, which gave away the look of the thing, apparently, that the first trailer didn't. I called it, the movie's been out. I don't even know how it did. Did it win the weekend?
Yeah, it did like 44 million.
Oh, that's actually pretty good for a sci-fi and or horror that's not a tent pole. So yay for Jordan Peele. I called it a giant flying butthole.
You did.
I did, which is it's kind of accurate as to what is up in the sky. It could be a giant flying esophagus, I guess. Either way, there's a rectum at both ends of that tract. So, or a sphincter, I should say, which is pretty gross because there's some pretty gross stuff in here. I'm of two minds on Nope. On one hand, I like what he did, and on the other, I don't really like what he did or how he did it, I guess, if that makes sense, because there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on, yeah.
We got this family with a history in Hollywood. They run. They provide horses and or some other animals to the movie industry. The father, the patriarch, dies in the beginning in a weird set of circumstances, and his two kids, his son, is trying to run the business. His sister is kind of around, sort of, kind of, but she's off doing her thing. She's played by Keke Palmer. And Daniel Kaluuya is our protagonist. He plays OJ Haywood. She's Emerald Haywood. And man, Steven Yeun is in here as a former child star, which that whole subplot, that's part of what maybe I'm of the other mind about, is that whole Gordy subplot. I don't know how to quantify this film, and I don't know if you've got any better luck.
Well, I mean, I think that you could argue that the Gordy segments, there's either too much of them or not enough of them. In that it does present some ideas, and it is the section that, at least at this point, is also getting the most think pieces. They does kind of, in effect, feel like a different movie, but it eventually comes together. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to approach a film like this having only seen it once. I would say my reaction to it was generally positive, with some question marks in the way that a few things were done. And the merging of the two stories being, part of that.
But they never really merged.
Well,
kind of.
There's a little bit. They overlap a little bit. And again, there are aspects that you have to really suspend your disbelief for a few elements of this film, and that's not unheard of
Right.
But I think that for me, if I'm thinking about it,
Mhm.
I shouldn't, it may not have been done as well as it should have been. So if I'm thinking, oh, okay, I'll just let this go. Maybe the rules of that world have not been established well enough, or um, in this case, it's yeah, there were just things here and there um, about the way that elements of the story spooled out. But I think generally it's a pretty good film. But I think the problem is also when you're Jordan Peele, despite having only this is his third film really.
Right.
Obviously, he established himself in the comedic world prior to jumping over to kind of the sci-fi genre horror sort of stuff. And because Get Out was so layered, but also fairly easy to to understand.
Right.
I think
Well, you didn't have to understand all of Get Out to
no,
understand Get Out.
right. So I think that it's kind of set up a no-win situation when you want to talk about one of Jordan Peele's shows because I thought Us worked really well as just a straight up horror film. Um, and obviously there was some other layered stuff in there, but I thought that if you just watched that film as a horror film, it's a pretty darn good horror film.
Oh yeah, it's
And I think,
fabulous.
rather than trying to question every little thing that he did in that film, and I to a certain degree think this one is that way as well. It's not nearly as uh, there are a few different stories going on here, and that's a little bit more messy. And I think I don't know. Maybe after I see it a second time, I might feel differently, but it is a little rough in that area.
Yeah,
Um,
I just think there's too much.
yeah,
He's got too many elements here.
yeah, and there's a lot that happens in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Um, and again, I tried not to overthink on the first run through. Like I think that there obviously is a lot that he has to say,
Yep.
and I to a certain extent I'll leave that exploration to people who are smarter than I on some of that. Who better understand the nuance or who better understand the well the issues that he's addressing. Um, being minority, people are drawing parallels between the Gordy being the chimpanzee being treated in this yeah the treatment of Gordy has been an issue. The treatment of the child actor who Stephen Yeun plays has been an issue. The way that he kind of uh, the way that this traumatic event impacts his life um, is an interesting thing.
It is, but it's like
But does it? But the question is, does it work when you kind of put it up against this other story that's being told?
yeah, it's like this film feels like it's trying to do more than either comment on animal treatment or the entertainment industry. It feels like it wants to do more than that, but you can point to all these little things that it might be talking about,
Yeah.
and so there's just so much going on. It's like nothing ever really
Yeah.
gets
Again.
in. He doesn't really dig into it all. At least you're right. Maybe not just on the first pass,
Yeah.
but it's like I don't know that I need to run right out and see it again.
Yeah. I don't
There
know.
wasn't quite enough there for me to go, hold on. I need to go back and rewatch that because it's not clear what I'm going to back to look for or verify, if that makes sense.
Sure.
You go back, you watch Get Out, you're like, hold on, let's go back and look at that again. You watch Us, you go, hold on, let's go back and look at that again. Here, it's like, well, what am I going back to look for?
Well, to me, the one subplot that didn't work at all, and that felt the strangest to me was the other film, the filmmaker, the cinematographer.
Oh yeah, right.
Um,
The I Michael Wincott.
yeah,
Yeah, he's
the
in. You know him when you see him.
anyway,
I loved his character.
sure,
I thought he
sure.
was a great character, but it was just kind of this weird drop in. But again, that's what I was saying. There's just so much stuff. It's like I pull one thing out and dive a little deeper on the other three or four,
Yeah,
or something. And that's why I'm not super excited to just dive right back into it, because I'm like if I dive back into it for one thing, then do I need to go back in again and look at this other thing to try to
yeah.
figure it out? Is it for right now for me? It's just that scattered that I can't really get jazzed about going back in.
Yeah, and I again, like I said, without, I mean, it's to really discuss the elements that I question
Mm.
would be very spoilery.
We can do that.
Um,
I can count down a spoilery part and tell people to stop. But we can tell people whether, I mean, if you're a Jordan Peele fan and you haven't already seen it, go see it.
yeah, yeah. No, I think without question, if you looked at it and said that looks interesting, you should go see it.
Oh, it's interesting.
Yeah, and
Uh,
the reactions to it have been across all over the place. And again, I don't think it's fair that we're supposed to judge this on one screening. Um, but it's really not. And when I say not fair, I don't think it's fair to the artist. I don't think it's fair to us. Um, but it's the way that the industry has been set up and the way it has been done for ages. And frankly, do we have time to watch everything twice, considering how much everything that is out there? It's problematic in trying to approach a Jordan Peele film and just look at the surface. Don't try to think about what's underneath, and then later go back and start digging into that stuff.
yeah.
He's almost like watching a documentary on what is it the Shining documentary, where everything that Kubrick did was considered, like everything that he did, he controlled every aspect of the image. So there was nothing that, even in the background and things, and
That was
so
there
you're
by
saying, well,
chance.
yeah, well, and the assumption to a lot of theories about what The Shining is really about have to do with, well, there's no way that Kubrick didn't mean to line up the cans in a certain way, or there's a poster on the wall that's framed in a certain way that has to be I mean, there's just,
Yeah.
yeah, even when there's incongruities, like where did those chairs go? It becomes a, he meant to do that, and whether or not he did, I don't know. But the
Right.
fact that the way they approach the film is that Kubrick, every aspect he controlled, so every tiny detail,
Has to
where
mean something.
it has to mean something, and so at some point it's just like, well, can't I just watch The Shining? is,
Yes,
is
you
that
can.
okay?
Just don't watch
Okay.
it with those people.
Anyway, but and so and it can be fun going down those rabbit holes. But at the end of the day, can't I just watch? Nope. Can I just
Yes.
and I mean, obviously there's I do like, and one thing that's you don't have to dig very deep in. It's right there in front of you, is the history of cinema and how the first movie star was technically a black man.
Yep.
And
Was a
I think
Jamaican
that's
a Jamaican jockey.
I think that's pretty awesome, actually, and I think that's something that I'm glad to have, that history lesson. And I don't, it doesn't feel too much, because it works into the family story, and I appreciate that, and
Right.
I like that.
It feels more like a bit of family lore than this film. You know what I mean? Like I said, so there's
Sure,
a lot.
sure.
There's just all these little things that
Well,
don't really click together
yeah,
for me. And
I
that's
think the brother sister dynamic is interesting to me, because the father had both the intelligence and the charisma
yep.
to have this Hollywood, to work with movie stars and to do the Hollywood thing. Well, between the brother and sister, they have that, but neither
Yes.
one on their own has that, and they're the effort to be what their father was. They kind of trip over each other, and so it that dynamic I thought was interesting. But that's really only at the very beginning, and then we shift to kind of something different.
Yeah, where it's
And
not about the
they're
business, it becomes about the giant
other
flying
things.
butthole. Yeah. So yeah, that's why I was a nope on Nope. It's not because it's a bad film. And yeah, he did set his own bar way too high with his first two films.
Well,
Uh,
but was it him or was it us?
well, he
I mean,
put something out
when I say us, I mean audiences
right.
and critics. Um, are we expecting every little thing that he does to have meaning now? Are we expecting, there's no, and in this 2 hour film, there's nothing that he didn't pre-plan.
Right.
Or, I mean, it's just, I don't know. And there are a lot of think pieces out there that are interesting. And I'm sure there will be many more.
Oh yeah.
Um, and you read them, but there's that part of me that says, well, did he tell you that?
Or did
Did
you
he
just
tell you, or did you just decide that that has to be what he's saying? And I always go back to an experience when I was in middle school. Um, I had a little short poem that was published in, I don't remember, an annual thing. I don't know. So I don't remember what it was. But the people who would come up and talk to me about this little poem, and they all had a different interpretation, and they were all certain that they knew what it was about. And I remember just being like, it's none of those things, but I guess in a way it's all of those things.
well, that's the wonderful
Because
thing about literature.
yeah, so
Yeah.
even, intense and who knows, but it's a no-win situation to be critical of Jordan Peele because the response will always be, well, you just didn't get it.
See, I fucking hate that. I hate because
Yeah,
that is huge, and this could be a separate episode. That's huge on social media. The diehard defenders of a film or a
yeah,
franchise or a director is always that's when they run out of arguments. They've run out of arguments when they revert to you just don't get it. It's like bullshit. The creator should give you something to get. Even
yeah,
if you don't get it all, you should get something. So that whole bullshit about you don't get it, that's a cop out, and I hate that argument.
yeah.
I,
So
I'm willing to say I didn't get a film or didn't get all of it and say I liked it, and but I didn't get this. I don't understand this part. And as I said, I understood some of what he was doing here. I just don't see his big picture. So do I, quote unquote, not get it? Well, sure. If there's something he was shooting for and you point it out to me and I can go back and look at it, but if you tell me it's about this and I look at it, I'm
yeah,
I'm I like to think of myself as fairly intelligent. And if you point it out to me and I still can't find it, I'm going to call shenanigans. And that's really where a lot of the social media crap is. They're just, I call shenanigans. You just don't get it. It's like, no, I just didn't like it, or whatever. But I hate that argument. You just don't get it. So if I didn't get Nope, that's fine. I understood a bunch of the pieces. I just didn't see how they all came together. I liked a lot of the storylines. I liked the characters, even the weird little tech guy. Uh, but like I said, I loved Michael Wincott as the director, the guy that came in. I thought that was it's like I could watch a whole movie about that guy chasing down weird crap to
yeah.
film. But yeah, that just didn't overall didn't work for me, and I can't. I'm not going to apologize for that. Um, maybe on another viewing, I'll be like, oh, there it is. I'll see one thing that I didn't see before. Or I'll hear a line that I didn't hear before correctly or something, and something will click. But it's like right now, it's like, don't give me that I didn't get it garbage. I hate that garbage. But yeah, so it's worth seeing. There's cool stuff. Real quick, I want to point out this is like the biggest scope that he's shot
Sure.
a film
Yeah.
on. This isn't, up in the Hamptons for Get Out. This isn't, in a couple of dark houses running through streets in Us. This is huge and beautifully shot landscapes and skyscape. It's gorgeous to look at too. And he used the whole palette when he went out there. He shot a lovely, lovely film. I just wish I got it more. And I said, got it, but you know what I mean. People don't call. You know what I mean when I say that. Yeah, but no, it's a beautifully expansive film compared to his other two, which were really intimate. I mean, and there's a lot of personal intimacy in here, but when you're looking at the film, it's just this huge, big, wonderful set of shots, which are just gorgeous. There's some beautiful, beautiful work in here. That, yes, I know the cinematographer does, but he's pointing him in the right direction. So he gets his fingerprints on it. So yeah, let's call that Nope. But so if you don't want to hear Ryan explain what he didn't like and spoilery stuff, you have like 5 seconds to turn this off. So, but don't forget to like us, follow us, all that garbage. You know where it is, at VS Movie Podcast. We're going to talk some spoilers now. So
3, 2, 1.
Okay, Ryan, what didn't you get? Or what are your issues?
So my big question is the central want of the film, is it to get a picture of this ship? Because there's such an emphasis put on getting a photo. They have the cameras, and ultimately they end up at the theme park.
They want a clear image,
and
whether it's film, whether it's, because they have the video cameras up there trying to get video of it, yeah. Or they want to be the ones. I mean, stop and think about it. The first movie star was a black Jamaican jockey, and that plays into their family. What if the first true 100% no shit alien photograph is that family? That's their moment.
But we see the photograph
at the end, yes,
and it is not convincing.
No, but it is on top of everything else that is out there. There's the 800. There's the people. There's the news crews. There's the grainy footage. There's there's the that.
But here's also the issue with the news crews. The news crews apparently only show up at convenient times where they don't get in the way of the narrative.
Yeah, I noticed that as well, actually.
In the sense that, there's this massive, giant, crazy thing doing a dance in the desert, basically.
Right.
They've been in the area or are in the area because the story was breaking only a couple days before, a day before, whatever.
Yep.
But somehow there's no one there. And it's not even an issue of, well, their cameras went down.
Right.
Or
they're just not there.
Literally, they're not there. So what it turns into is witnesses.
Yeah.
I guess there's only a handful of witnesses, even though this massive, crazy thing just happened.
Yep.
And part of my issue with bringing the director in is he's supposed to be filming, that will capture it with that.
Yep. And the question, did he?
Well, yes, I think so. So why can't you find his film? Or is it because according to the world that this takes place in, the alien will spit out non-organic stuff.
But the camera he was shooting with was still on the ground. And then he walked away to try to shoot it with another handheld.
But then the other guy was shooting with the other thing.
With the big, IMAX conversion. Yeah. So there was a lot of things. But that was the central want, was to be the ones that got the shot.
But the whole, and that's where it's a little disconnect for me, because it starts out being, we want to save our business.
Yep.
We want to be about a horse farm. We want to continue our tradition. We want to not fade into we want to keep our place in this narrative. and then it turns into, and then it's suddenly like that's not that important.
Right.
And it's all about getting this picture. Like that becomes the most important thing. And I don't know, it's just hard for that's where it's like you've just taken things a little too far.
Yeah, and that's, like I said, that's what it didn't quite gel for me. Like I said, there's a lot of cool stuff in here, but it just doesn't. It just didn't do it for me, and in that way.
I mean, I liked the film more than I disliked the film, but there's just aspects of it that were like, really? What world did this take? Is it in our world? Is it not in our world?
Yeah.
The stuff with Gordy, I think it's interesting, and the scene where they go into the secret room where he has all the Gordy,
the memorabilia.
Yeah, I think that is awesome. That is one of my favorite scenes that I've seen in a long time, because suddenly it's like this young actor who grew up worships the most traumatic moment in his life. Like he literally worships it. And that's fascinating to me that someone, not only would they be haunted by the experience, but they'd be obsessed and be a collector of it. And I mean, there's just sort of this interesting darkness of, that's going on there. And to me, that stuff was probably the most interesting.
Well, and then he turns around and he's got this really spiritual look at the thing.
Yeah.
So it's, like I said, it just, there's way too many threads here, and all of them are interesting, but none of them ever took me any place I wanted to go or where I felt like I was there. And that's what killed me. It's like, oh, this movie could, it's just, it's not his best of the three.
No. But yeah, and the whole power stuff not working, sort of.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the audio element of that, the way that it made sunglasses at night sound, or
I know, right?
Those sort of things where you're like, my gosh, if everything in Porter Time they're sped down to whatever is creepy, but yeah, it just I don't know. I guess it's ultimately not about saving the ranch.
Yeah,
really.
I'm not really sure what it's about. So,
but another scene that I loved though, and I thought was awesome, was in the barn when the kids are dressed up like aliens.
Right.
I thought that was some of the coolest stuff. Like that was genuinely like, oh my gosh, are they really going there? Oh my gosh! But no,
it's a teaser for Stephen Ewan's show. It's like so again, it gets kind of just lost and discarded. It's like so
and that's where I'm at. I think there were some absolutely brilliant moments, but they don't all come together for me, and that's and I guess that's the problem. It's but again, if you want to see the film, you should see the film.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And like I said, I'll watch it again when it comes. You don't have to see it on the big screen, like I said, although it is his biggest film, so it is kind of pretty.
I think you would be best served to, but I think that generally, I'm a bridge.
I saw one today that maybe we'll talk about in the future. Definitely, you want to see on the big screen. So, so there you go. That's our spoilery discussion of Nope. If you stayed this long, so we've got at least one more movie to talk about, which we're going to get to in a second. But until we do, don't forget to like us, follow us on social media at VS Movie Podcast. You know how all that works. If you're on YouTube, click subscribe. That's great as well. Stay tuned. We will be back soon. And until we are, I am Mark. That is Ryan. Bye, Ryan.
See you guys.